It's Wednesday, October 16, 2019. Digital Trends Live is about to start here. Some of the topics we'll cover today. The Democratic debates happened last night, and big tech could not be ignored. We'll recap what some of the candidates were saying, and we'll have a bit of a cocktail break on the show when Sam Slaughter from The Manual joins us to talk about the Spirit Awards and how hard it must be to try out all those different kinds of alcohol. It's a tough job, but somebody has to do it. We'll be covering that, and we'll have the details on a slightly upgraded autonomous version of the Mayflower that is being built to cross the Atlantic from Plymouth to Plymouth without all of those pesky pilgrims on board. And you've seen him on Conan O'Brien, you've heard him on Mark Maron's WTF podcast, but now comedian Billy Wayne Davis has officially made it because he's going to be appearing here today. All that and more coming up on Digital Trends Live. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Digital Trends Live. This is our daily show here from Digital Trends where we talk about all kinds of things. We bring you the trending tech topics of the day, news, interviews, headlines, discussions, and so much more, all while broadcasting live across a number of different platforms. We're on Periscope, Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, Facebook, Dailymotion, Apple News, LinkedIn, 2 different mobile apps, a smart television app, and we're at digitaltrends.com/live. Thank you.
It was almost
one
good.
breath.
That's gotten longer and longer every time I get on. But that was really good.
Everybody wants our programming. What can we say? So thank you to everybody who's watching right now. So whatever platform you're on, we're interactive. We can see your comments and questions as they come through, so make sure you drop those in there. But yeah, let's get the show going here. I'm Greg Nibbler, joined by Drew Prindle.
What up, Greg?
Hello, Drew. We have a lot to talk about in a short amount of time.
Yeah, we do. Let's blast through it.
Let's get into it. So here's what's going on. Last night, I don't know if have you seen this? Have you heard about this? The Democratic debates happened. Huge news for a number of different reasons. We're going to focus on one aspect, though, and that is how much big tech was brought up during the debates. I think clearly more than ever, tech cannot be ignored when it comes to politics in any way, shape, or form. It touches every part of our lives, and definitely was apparent during these political debates, and big tech being one of the big overall themes, I think, of what we've seen. And a lot of it has to do with Elizabeth Warren's idea that should big tech be broken up? And I do want to know what people think about this. We're not going into the political side, but I mean, this is something that affects everybody, I think, no matter what side of the aisle you're on. And should big tech be broken up? And we're talking about, the huge companies, Facebook, Amazon, Microsoft, I suppose, Apple, Google, those big ones right there.
Yes.
Should they be broken up? And certainly we've seen Facebook and Amazon brought up in a lot of ways when it comes to that. And looking at some of the quotes that we have here, there were some that were brought up. Elizabeth Warren had a quote in particular that said, Amazon has too much power. You can be an umpire or you can own a team, but you can't do both in the same game. That's a pretty big statement right there about whether or not Amazon is too big.
Yeah, and I think she's hitting on something that we've all known for a long time. It's
right.
Like they have way too much power and influence, and the fact that they're just not paying taxes.
Yeah.
Come on, man. Like, it's time.
Yeah.
I think this is something that, like, unanimously, regardless if you're a Republican or a Democrat, yeah, we should probably do this, right?
You think Amazon should be broken up?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, and that's certainly, Amazon is enormous. There's no denying it. Amazon alone controls so much of economic power. You just can't deny that no matter what side you're on. And that's something that I think, when it comes down to that, that's a huge debate that I think a lot of people want to have when it comes to Amazon, Facebook, Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp, they control so much as well. And that goes into talking about data, and data being such a key thing that companies control. Data is essentially the new oil. And that's why this was being brought up a lot. You have a quote from Andrew Yang who said, the best way we can fight back against big tech is saying our data is our property. Right now, our data is worth more than oil. How many of you remember getting your data check in the mail? And that's an excellent way to look at it, because our data is used as as a commodity.
The thing is, though, we're like voluntarily giving it up.
We're
doing that in the user agreement. So, like, in order for us to take ownership back of our data, there would need to be like, a little bit of an uprising. Like, we need to show the tech companies, like, hey, we actually want that. You need to demand that, like, no, I want to use your services without giving you all of the rights to my data.
And there's a catch-22 there too, in the larger, bigger debate about that. As far as data is, you're also not paying for it.
Yeah.
You don't monetarily pay.
Yeah, they call them $0 services. You're not giving money, but you are paying for it in some way, and that way is your data.
Yeah, nothing is for free. But should there be some more regulation on that? Certainly. I mean, in this era that we've entered into of big data, where that's such a huge issue, and security concerns definitely, I think, are something that should probably be regulated. I think we can all agree with that. But yeah, these are the debates that are being had right now, just around big tech in general, and we do want to know what your thoughts are on this. So drop those comments in there, and I'm seeing some come through. I'll take a look at those here as we go through the show. But let's go to another couple of quotes. We had some other people who, talking about big tech, didn't want necessarily it to just be blanket, to have that as a blanket thing that would happen. You had Beto O'Rourke, who said, "I don't think it is the role of a president or a candidate for the presidency to specifically call out which companies will be broken up." So most likely referring to the Amazon and Facebook side of things.
And that's fair. That's a good point. Like it isn't necessarily the job of a president to put in those legislative things that will, regulate companies, potentially break somebody up.
Yeah.
The president can recommend legislation.
Right.
But like whatever the president wants done, that's going to run through the other branches of government. It needs to be validated by Congress or the courts or something before it actually comes into effect. So I'm kind of with him on this one. It's not really necessarily a candidate's role to say which companies will go after.
This is the one that needs to be.
It's something that we should all be deciding.
Yeah, and that's something that we're going to be seeing a lot more of this. Just a couple more quotes on this, and then we do have some other tech news to get to before we get to our break. But Bernie Sanders said, "We need a president who has the guts to appoint an attorney general who would take on these huge monopolies, protect small businesses, and protect consumers by ending the price fixing that we see every day." So that's, I think, kind of going along the lines with that of appointing someone else who would be in charge of that, of determining it. I mean, it's certainly a huge issue that we're going to see more and more and more of. I mean, it's something that regardless, every one of us is going to have to make a decision on how we feel about it and how it should be regulated, or should it not be regulated? Do we leave things as it is? I mean, there's a deciding point where we all have to come to an agreement on, or, well, not necessarily an agreement. We all know that's not going to happen. But you have to make a decision on how you feel about it, and it's a definitely complex issue. It's not going to be decided in one debate. There's no way to determine who's right or wrong, but that's certainly something that we'll be talking a lot about. One other thing that, as far as tech being brought up within the context of the Democratic debate, was Kamala Harris talking about Twitter, saying that Twitter should shut down President Trump's account. So there's that aspect. I mean, looking at that from a bigger context, I see it as more, how do social networks moderate their content?
Yeah.
And what responsibility do they have in that? Can they just pick and choose who gets regulated, without going too far into one side or another on this? It's certainly something that we've seen a lot of, where we see issues with what's being moderated.
Yeah, I think the problem is nobody wants to be the person that steps in and stifles free speech, right?
Yeah.
Like if the platform does it, they're going to get flack for doing that, and if the government steps in and makes the platform do that, the government's going to look like the bad guy.
Yeah.
You're not going to look good either way, but some sort of moderation and rules so that you can't just yell fire in a crowded theater online.
Yeah.
That's what we need.
I'm seeing a great comment by George on Facebook right now, which I think aptly sums this up. "The challenge for those running for office: attack the tech companies to get the people behind you, but become a target by these companies, or avoid the discussion and stay under the radar." And that's kind of what it is. Where do you go with that? And it's a debate of our time. I mean, tech companies are not going away. Big tech is here, and how we manage it, how it affects our lives. I mean, these are debates that we're going to be having certainly through the presidency, but it's going to go way beyond that. But a lot to think about with that. So when that happens, we like to bring it up and just call attention to it, and get your thoughts and opinions. This is an interactive show. Let us know what you think either way. We have a couple of things to get to here. We do have Sam Slaughter from The Manual is going to be joining us in just a little bit. But before that, a couple other trending news stories to get to outside of this, talking about the streaming wars, streaming services. Maybe this is something we need to consolidate instead of break up, because there are so many streaming services now, and there's one more entering into the mix with AMC. With their new streaming service, yes, the theater chain now has a streaming service where you're going to be able to rent thousands of movies. They have about 2,000 films that can be bought or rented for home viewing after their theatrical runs are over. And to me, at this point, if it's after the theater run, then why would I necessarily go to AMC?
Maybe you just love old movies, man.
Yes.
I don't know.
So the rental prices will vary between $3 and $6 and $10 and $20 for purchases. I suppose $6 for some new releases, if you are going to rent them, that's probably a good price. But at that point, I mean, is this a service that anybody's really clamoring for?
Not necessarily, but is anybody... I feel like that could be said of so many of these streaming services. At this point, everybody's hopping on the bandwagon because... this is just the thing to do. You have a streaming app where your content exclusively is on, and you are just, it's basically like carving out your own channel on the internet.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's essentially it. There's so many different streaming services. We do have, this is what AMC said, they have exclusive deals with Disney, Warner Brothers, Universal, Sony, and Paramount. So there's probably something there. From what I understand, though, for Disney, I would be really surprised if they had some of their all of their movies on there, like all the Marvel movies when it comes up to rent.
Absolutely.
I kind of doubt it too, but I don't know. We don't know exactly what the details are. Maybe there's some kind of an arrangement for, if you pay a certain amount, you can buy it through that. Maybe that's what it is. You can just buy the movie. I don't know, but it's definitely interesting. We have another streaming service that's entering into the mix. So that's streaming service number 7,204.
TV sucks now, man.
How many streaming services do you subscribe to?
Like 3 is,
Yeah.
and which is
Netflix.
feels like way too much.
Yeah.
I'm paying probably more than I would for a cable subscription.
I know I am.
It's bundled with internet. It's ridiculous.
And I know I'm about ready to subscribe to Disney Plus too. They're going to get my money. I mean, they just are. No? Are you going to back out of it?
I'll wait. I'll bide my time. I'll see if it's worth it.
Good for you. You're strong. I'm not. I'm very weak. I'm gonna get it. I'm gonna watch it the first day. So there's that. So that's AMC getting a streaming service. You can read more about that at digitaltrends.com. Let us know what you think along those lines. And speaking of streaming and internet access, that kind of works. We're gonna do this. Let's talk about Starlink. And we already know that Starlink, so in case you don't know, Starlink is a subsidiary of SpaceX. It's another company along those lines where their goal is to provide satellite internet to the globe. They want to encompass the globe in satellites and provide internet to a lot of areas that could not have access to broadband before. And they've already started launching these satellites. They started earlier this year. They had a batch of 60 that went up, and they're going to continue launching them. And the goal was to get up to 12,000 satellites in low Earth orbit. But now they want more. They're actually applying for 30,000 more satellites, where they would have 42,000 satellites encompassing the globe.
How? Like I saw the animation of how they were going to get like 12,000, and it was this crazy like interlace pattern that was like very carefully choreographed. And if one of them was out of line, it would cause a cascading effect of them all crashing.
There it is, right there. Yeah, this is an idea of what it would be.
So how do you pack like 3 times as many as that on top of that?
And that's just them. So that's not stopping anybody else from putting up satellites. There's other companies.
There's also Amazon is trying to do it.
Yep, Amazon's trying. There's
SoftBank is trying to do the same thing.
Yep, SoftBank. I think they own one. Yeah, SoftBank definitely is trying to do it as well. So there's a lot of companies that are trying to do this, and all of those satellites. They already had an issue with the Starlink satellite where it almost hit an Indian satellite.
Yeah.
And the Indian satellite had to move out of the way in order not to get hit.
Dude, the space junk problem is about to get so much more
It's
worse.
pretty crazy. But you can read more about that at digitaltrends.com. Let us know what you think. I mean, definitely more broadband access is a great thing. There's a lot of areas of the world, even the United States, that don't have access to broadband internet. So that's good. But man, 42,000 satellites seems like a lot.
I guess it's, it's space, though. It's pretty big.
Space, man.
It's pretty big, dude.
Yeah, it is pretty big.
We can fit a lot of stuff up there.
That's true. All right, well, we have a lot coming up here on the show today. Drew, would you like a drink? There we go. That's what's coming up next. So here's the deal. We have a lot to talk about here on Digital Trends Today, but coming up next, we have Sam Slaughter from The Manual to talk about the Spirit Awards. We're broadcasting live. Drop in your comments, your questions. We'll be back here in a minute with more Digital Trends Live. Do it. And welcome back to Digital Trends Live. Thank you for joining us. Hit that subscribe button wherever you're watching. That way you get the notifications when we do go live. And let's do this. Let's talk about some booze. So joining us right now, we have Sam Slaughter from themanual.com, a brother site to digital trends, men's lifestyle, but the Spirit Awards have just come out. Sam, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
I have to say this just behind, if you follow along with what we do here, the Manual podcast is available for anybody to download. Sam, I, and Nicole are part of that, and this is Sam's booze bunker that we always talk about on the podcast, but nobody ever gets to see it. This is actually in your house, is it not?
This is my office, yes.
It's a rough job that Sam has, but it really is, though, pretty amazing what just came out, and that is the Spirit Awards for themanual.com. So, Sam, can you walk us through what the Spirit Awards are?
Sure. We started the project last year in 2018, and what we set out to do was find what we feel were the best craft spirits in America. There are over, I think it's 1,500, almost 2,000 distilleries in the country, and there's a lot of booze being made and a lot of really good booze being made, and so we wanted to try and find it.
And that is a huge task. I mean, that many different craft spirits. You think about just how much it's grown over the last, decade. I mean, where it's come, just exponential growth. So that's a hard job. So I want to know how it is you filter through all of that and determine how this works.
So, I mean, right out off the bat, we have not tried all, spirits from all 2,000 places. It's what we can find, what we're finding from friends. Obviously, back here, I get a lot of stuff sent to me, so I get the chance to try a lot of things. And from there, we whittle it down, we talk about it, we drink it, and then we drink it again, probably a third or fourth time. And then we find our finalists, and we do a blind tasting to determine the winners.
So how do you determine, I guess, let's talk about what the different categories are with all of those different kinds of spirits. How do you divide those up?
We did 8 categories this year. So bourbon, single malt, American, try this again. I promise I haven't been drinking. American single malt whiskey.
It's your job.
Rye, gin, vodka, unaged rum, aged rum, and liqueurs.
Okay, so it's putting them all up in that facet. And what made you choose those categories?
They, I think, were the most representative of what's being made. There are obviously other spirits being made in the U.S. Flavored vodkas, there's vermouth, there's tons of other things available, but these were the categories we felt were most emblematic.
So once you divide up into those categories, then you get some representative samples. Like how many different kinds would you say per category did you go through before you determined your ones for the blind taste test?
So we started, I started with the help of others right after the Spirit Awards last year, and so we were just tasting on and off for about 6 or 7 months, tasting through whatever we could find, whenever we could find it, whether it was at a bar or in my own home bar or anywhere. So it takes a while to get through all that stuff.
So let's talk about, I've got 2 different ones here, and I want you to try to maybe explain what these 2 are that I've got, and then let's walk through the categories just to give a representative example of what it's like to do this.
Sure. The one that you have your hand on is the winner in the liqueur category. It's the Bluebird Alpine Liqueur from Townsend's. If anyone is in Portland, they're probably familiar with Townsend's Tea Company. This is made by them. It is their take on an alpine liqueur, so something that you would have, before skiing or after skiing or during skiing, whenever. It's bittersweet, so you've got some nice, obviously, sweet notes. Bitter herbs are put into it to make it sort of wake you up a little bit, to soothe your stomach if you need it. You can probably make up other ailments, and it would help those too.
I want to make a note too. It is actually National Liqueur Day today. It is indeed. So for everybody out there who may not know the exact, I knew you were drinking, who may not know the exact definition of liqueur, could you give what that is?
Sure. It's a spirit that typically has some sort of flavoring agent. So whether it's herbs like this or fruits, anything like that. And then there's an addition of sugar. So it's lower alcohol. This one is 35, 38. But you're normally going to see them in the 20s to 30 range.
So
of alcohol by volume.
Okay, so that's kind of where it lies. That's what I thought. It stays below like a normal, like a 40.
There's a threshold typically.
Okay, so this is the Alpine liqueur, and this was the top one in that category that you got. And so what, do you have like a second and third place when it comes to that?
Yeah, there are runners up, and you can find them on themanual.com. Under our thing, you can look for American Craft Spirits, and then you can find all of the winners and the runners up for each category.
Okay. So we've got that here. It's being noted, George, more importantly, check out that PlayStation Hawaiian shirt. So yes, that is, you've already got some fans with that. That is awesome. Okay, let's continue on here. Let's talk about another one. So I've got also one of the other categories. Can you walk us through this? I'm sure this is a tough one, but walking through rye whiskey.
The whiskey categories are always tough. There's so much good stuff being made by small distillers. This is Bare Knuckle rye whiskey. It's made out of Manassas, Virginia, and KO Distilling is the distillery. It's 100% rye grain. So to be a rye whiskey, you need to have at least 51% rye, which is the grain. This is 100%, and so you're going to get a lot of the spice notes that you would from rye, and you've got some the aging, so the caramel flavors or the toffee flavors from the oak, and it all comes together really nicely in there.
So what made this one stand out from any other ones? Just those different categories? Because to me, it would be hard for me to tell the difference at a certain point.
It is very hard to tell the difference at a certain point. It spoke to me on that day when I was doing it in my blind tasting, and so the way that we have a point scale of nose, palate, finish, all the things like that go together, and that one won on points.
Well, this is the Bare Knuckle. Again, that's a great name too, by the way. Bare Knuckle Straight Rye Whiskey. So that's out of Manassas, Virginia. So these are just 2 of the categories out of the 8 different categories that are all at themanual.com that everyone can go there and take a look at for the Spirit Awards. And Sam, I also want to say this. I believe you have a book of some kind. Can you tell us about said book?
I do, and that's why I was wearing the PlayStation shirt. It was a slow setup. I have a book of 90s cocktails that came out in June called Are You Afraid of the Dark Rum and Other Cocktails for 90s Kids.
It is a great book, and where can people pick that book up?
It's on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, in your local bookstore. So, shop local. You can find it on indiebound.com.org to find where your local bookstores are. But wherever books are sold, you'll find it. It's bright neon. It's very hard to miss.
It is indeed. And it's great. And Sam, I want to thank you. Seriously, that is really hard work to go through all this. And so I'm excited to try out some of these different kinds that you have painstakingly filtered through for everybody. So those are all at themanual.com for the Spirit Awards. And I want to remind everybody, too, of the podcast, the Manual Podcast, wherever you get podcasts. Hit subscribe each week. It's Sam, Nicole, and I, and then guests talking about all kinds of things. This week, we're talking to Sam Slaughter about the Spirit Awards. So it'll be an extended conversation of what you just had right here. We'll go into a little more detail, but you can always check that out, the Manual Podcast, wherever you get those. Sam, as always, thank you very much. It's nice to get the Booze Bunker on camera, and I'll talk to you soon.
Yeah, I'll talk to you soon. See you later.
All right, so there we go. Sam Slaughter, absolutely amazing. So it really is pretty incredible. I highly suggest going there and taking a look at this and reading it at themanual.com. Great article just about all these different spirits. And we have so many fun things that are coming up here on the show today. We're just firing through everything. So we've got a lot to talk about today. Coming up later on the show, we have comedian Billy Wayne Davis, who's going to be joining us. We're going to be talking to Matt Katz about China and tech. How does this all work out? But coming up next, we have another interview for you, and that is Mike Sample from Liberty Mutual Insurance, talking about driving safety. We're all distracted when we drive. It's just a fact. So we're going to talk about what factors come into that, how we can fix that, and what some of the statistics show. All of that coming up and more here on Digital Trends Live. Welcome back to Digital Trends Live. Again, thank you for joining us. Hit that subscribe button on whatever platform you're watching. That way you get the notifications when we do go live, because we get to talk about all kinds of fun things here on the show. So let's do that right now. We're going to be joined now by Mike Sample, who is the lead driving safety expert for Liberty Mutual Insurance. Mike, thanks for joining the show.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be on.
I want to talk about this. Can you give everybody an idea of what a lead driving safety expert, what that role is?
So I certainly work with the consumers and different businesses to focus on the task of driving and to really reduce their crash risk by identifying at-risk behaviors so that they know where they should be focusing their efforts.
It seems like now more than ever there are more distractions possible while driving than I think ever before, and tech is certainly to blame for some of that, and operators as well. But let's walk through some of this. I know there was a big study that came out, and I want you to kind of go through this here with us, just about millennial drivers. I know, sorry, millennials get the blame for a lot of things, but let's talk about that study itself and walk through what some of the findings were.
So in the Liberty Mutual Insurance Global Driving Study, we looked at multiple generations in the US and Western Europe. And the study truly identified that the US millennial will admit to using their phone behind the wheel up to 90% of the individuals we interviewed. But that doesn't mean we're all off the hook. We certainly saw that across all generations, 67% of us admitted to using their phone while driving. And that could be for texting, emailing, checking an app. And really part of the study, and certainly this outreach, is to get the message that we need to focus on that primary task of driving.
So the phone being one of the main things distracting, and I want to kind of talk about that just a little bit more. Was that just because millennials admitted to it, or was it that a lot of people are? And I know you just kind of touched on it a little bit there, but I'd like to go a little bit more in depth on that.
Well, I think there's a couple things there. I think a lot of us are using our phone for a lot of good features. The ability to use it for GPS mapping helps a lot of us every single day. But there's a good way to do that by, say, putting it up on the dash and preloading it before you start to drive so that you're not distracting yourself while the wheels are in motion. But the other part that we identified is there's so many other things that are drawing our attention away from the road. And we really want to talk about how to use that phone, when to put it away, and really focus on driving, like I mentioned. The millennials themselves are part of the global tech culture. They've grown up using these devices for most of their life. And so they get a little older, they get their driver's license, and that behavior they've embedded upon themselves goes right into the vehicle with them. So it's kind of a wake-up call for all of us that we should be looking at our own behaviors and say, what is the most important thing that I'm doing while I drive? And of course, that's driving. And our goal is to get the message out and really get people home safe at the end of every day.
So let's walk through some tips and tricks on how to do that and how to be safe when you're driving.
So thanks for asking. We really talk about a couple of key things. I mentioned about using the GPS as such a key tool on that phone. And the part I want to reinforce is you don't want to be holding that in your hand. Preload your destination and use a bracket or some type of holder so that it's above and on the dash, so you still have visibility around you.
Sorry, that video, I'm laughing at the video.
that gentleman eating that giant sandwich is a little bit distracted with two hands on that. But we also talk about most of the time when a text or an email comes in, I think we all know on gut check, it's often not that important. Yet we have this almost Pavlovian response to react to that notification. So the things we're talking about is recognize that driving is what you should be doing. You could put the phone either in the glove box or away from yourself so that you can't react to it. And certainly we can use the technology of the do not disturb feature and silencing it so that we are in control of the phone and the phone is not in control of us.
That is a good way to look at it, yeah, because it is hard. It's hard. It is, like you said, that Pavlovian response. You want to just look and see what it is. Talking about it from that aspect, so those are some tips and tricks that we can do as drivers to try to not be distracted. But not everybody's going to follow that. I mean, I think we just know that statistically not everybody's going to follow. So how do you watch out and be aware of other people who are distracted?
So That's so true. We can encourage people's behavior. And then we, as the other driver, I think we've all seen it, right? Even myself, I was driving just 2 weeks ago and this scenario came up. I'm in my suburban neighborhood and I'm at a red light and I'm the first car and there's another car that's going to cross the road. He was the first car coming in my direction. It was a young driver and he, as the light went from red to green, was still on his phone with his head down as he drove through that intersection. So I was mindful of that. I paused to give him a little bit more space to get across that intersection before I even started to accelerate, just thinking, he's not even seeing me. And thank goodness I wasn't taking a left turn there. But yeah, those are the scenarios we run into. So if you do see that distracted driver in front of you, I think we've all recognized the symptoms on a road or certainly the highway. The car often slows down a little bit. The car often is weaving between the paint of the lane, and you can tell their mind is not on driving. So we want you to give that person a little bit more space. Maybe recognize that if you communicate or make a lane change, you should use that turn signal 6, 8, 10 flashes of light so that the communication loop is completed, and then ease around him, that driver, so that you're safe and you're kind of getting away from those people and giving them some space to make up for their poor decision making.
Yeah, okay, that's a good idea, to just get around them and safely get around them and kind of leave them there. I will follow that advice. So walking through, again, some tips and tricks. Any other things that you think people should know just about distracted driving and some other things they should be aware of while on the road?
Consequences. I think it's important that we really start to think about the big picture of what we're doing in a 3, 4, 5,000 pound vehicle. We are actually trying to go some places, do our lives. And that phone, although is a great tool and technology is so important, it's a hindrance to safe driving. And I want other people to recognize that Bluetooth technology is great technology. But even if you're using a hands-free device, you could be cognitively distracted. That means mentally drawn into that conversation, and you're really not paying attention to your driving. So I'll challenge our viewers today to talk about, have you ever missed a turn or driven past a highway exit because you were engaged in a phone conversation? Then you've had that moment where you're like, wow, I was not being present. I was not paying my attention to the roadway details. And I really want to stress, we don't want our viewers to have their near miss before they start changing their behaviors. We want them to be mindful of this and recognize that protecting themselves, their family, the public, and their work peers is what this is all about. And put that phone down, get to your destination, and really, just be the better driver who makes the better decision more often.
That is perfect advice. And I think that's really important. You don't want your lesson to come after the fact. Like, you definitely want to curb that behavior ahead of time. Well, Mike, I want to say thank you very much for joining us here on Digital Trends Live. So for this Liberty Mutual Insurance study and for finding out more about all of this, I want you to let everybody know where they can go.
So thank you. Yes, we've put up our safe driving tips at libertymutual.com/safe driving. And what I hope is that people will go to our website and maybe have a conversation at the dining room table or at the work conference room and talk about, we all can be more focused on being present and being the better driver on the road.
100%. Yep. I will think about what I'm doing right now after this conversation. I need to readjust a couple of things. So I want to say thanks, Mike, for joining us. Really appreciate you being here on Digital Trends Live.
Thank you for the opportunity.
All right, great things to know about safe driving, because we all probably do it. If you drive, you probably have looked at your phone at some point, so pay attention to that. It's really important. So we have that. That was a great interview. We have so much more coming up. So we're going to be talking about the news. We're going to be talking about China and tech and how that's affecting everything. We've all seen all the news. We're going to like get down into it and really figure out what exactly is happening to understand some more of that. But coming up next, we have Luke Larson, who is going to be here in studio with the Dell XPS 13 2-in-1. There it is. Talking hard sometimes. Hello, everyone. This is Digital Trends Live. Thanks for joining us. We'll be back here in a minute with more DT Live. Welcome back to Digital Trends Live. Thank you for joining us. We broadcast live here every weekday, 9 a.m. Pacific, noon Eastern. So hit that subscribe button and share the show. Why don't you? All right, I'm Greg Nibbler, joined now by Luke Larson. Hello, Luke.
Good morning, Greg.
Good morning, Luke. We have another computer to take a look at.
Yeah, I thought it'd be fun to bring in kind of something I've just finished up reviewing. So
Nice.
I've got my full thoughts on it.
Perfect.
It's one that I think comes with a lot of anticipation, so it's right here.
And I know, just to let everybody know, too, we're broadcasting live, so if you have questions, Luke is the expert on this. Fire them away. Let him know. Let him know what questions you have. So we're looking at the Dell XPS 2-in-1.
XPS 13 2-in-1.
13 2-in-1.
Yeah, lots of numbers.
Lots of numbers.
Obviously, I think this comes with a lot of... A laptop like this, for me, comes with a lot of anticipation because XPS 13 is, it's the best laptop I think you can buy. It's at the top.
That's a
of my
huge
list
statement
all
right
the
there.
time. Yeah.
The best laptop you can buy, the XPS 13.
I called it near perfect this year when it got relaunched because they moved the webcam back up top. It used to have the nose cam problem.
Yeah.
And they found a way to squeeze it up top. So really, I thought it was a laptop that was nearly perfect, And then they come out with this, something that it's a 2-in-1 version of, based on the name, just a 2-in-1 version of the normal clamshell. Mm-hmm. But lots of small things different here that they've done that I really think kind of like represent a new era in design for XPS, and I really, really like some of the small tweaks they've made to make this thing feel like a brand new product, feel a little more modern, and yeah, I think it's the next evolution of the products.
Which is a huge move because you see so many different laptop manufacturers where there's no real change. Where it's just, there's a minor little thing, but it's not really another iteration of the.
Especially for a company that's seen a lot of success with the XPS 13.
Yeah.
They could have just kind of sat back and.
It's kind of risky, isn't it, to make a bunch of changes?
It is risky, yeah, and it's risky, and I think the reason why they can do that a little more easily is because this is it's technically a separate product, so they can kind of experiment a little bit.
Gotcha.
So just kind of get into a couple of the things they've changed. Obviously, bezels are a big thing with the XPS. They were even before we saw thin bezels on phones, we were seeing it on the XPS 13 a way back at this point.
People do hate their bezels. Yeah.
People hate those bezels. It really started the trend with now it's just I see bezels and I'm just ugh.
It's just visceral reaction.
Yeah.
You want to throw something.
So these are the side and top bezels are the same as the XPS 13, but what they've actually done is cut the bottom down quite a bit, the chin, which is where you see a lot of the laptops. They cut out the top and the bottom, or the top and the sides, and then they just give it a huge chin at the bottom.
Wait, is that the technical term for that? That's the chin?
It's commonly referred to as the chin.
I did not know that. All right, see, so we learned something right there. This is the chin of the computer.
And you have to put the cable, you have to put the technology for the display somewhere, right?
Yeah.
So you can't have no bezels, right? So they've managed to squeeze it down a little bit, and what they did on top of that is it's called a reverse barrel hinge, and what it does is it kind of sits below the actual position of the keyboard.
Yeah.
And that just cuts out a little bit extra space there, so that when you're looking at it, you're actually looking at only some of the actual bezel. So it's a clever little visual trick to just kind of remove some of that bezel.
Just moves it from your eyesight, from your line of sight.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's not even big enough anymore to actually put the Dell logo down there, which I'm fine with that.
Right.
So yeah, it's just a small thing like that.
But that's definitely a pretty cool upgrade, and it's a smart upgrade.
Exactly, a small little innovation, a little tweak to kind of make the experience a little bit better. And what they actually did was they didn't just cut out that space entirely from the laptop that they saved there. They actually put it back into the screen. So now this is a 16:10 screen rather than a 16:9 screen. That's the aspect ratio.
Oh wow!
So it's a little bit taller than a typical laptop. So, some people like that, some people don't like it. I think it adds a little more for me when I'm working, when I'm on the web or whatever. You have more space, more vertical space. Mm-hmm. And I really have started to like that a lot.
Really?
Yeah. So you get to 6. And this is actually the same aspect ratio as what you get on a MacBook.
Okay.
So they've always used 16:10, and this kind of falls in line with that. And I think I think it's the better shape for this this device. So I really like that choice.
So with that as being one of the parts of this, as far as one of the aspects that you like, what are some of the other things? As far as the internals, did anything change?
Internals, this has moved up to the 10th gen Ice Lake processors from Intel, and we're not seeing these in very many laptops. So this is a pretty big, this is like the flagship device that's actually using these processors. You know, it's not, I would say for the average person, it's not going to be a huge difference, but what it does do is bring some new graphics, which is really cool. So it brings what are called Iris Plus graphics on the top end of the, if you get the more expensive versions.
Okay.
And what that means is you can actually play some games on it. It's not at all the same as buying a gaming laptop and getting a dedicated graphics card. But what this does is it's twice as powerful as, let's say, like what you get in integrated graphics from some other laptop from a year ago even. And what I think is cool about that is like that's stuff those are improvements, that very real world improvements that just like you couldn't get in a laptop this size a year ago, and now it's like I could play Fortnite on this laptop.
Yeah.
Not like extremely well, but like
Right.
I could play. It could totally playable. I've done it, and
I mean, just that step up alone, that's huge.
yeah,
for a
it's
laptop.
huge. Yeah, and so like that's it's real real progress in moving towards like getting to do more with these really thin laptops. So
Nice.
from a performance level, yeah, like I think there's something cool there. So.
I know going back to the hardware side, there was one other thing talking about the keyboard.
Yeah, the keyboard's
So-
been completely redesigned, and this is where I think there's going to be some
controversy?
There's going to be some divided opinions. on
Okay.
this. I think basically the keyboard that they're using here is a very specific type of mechanism, and it's the same one that you find on a MacBook.
Okay.
And
Oh,
the
I
modern
see.
the modern
Okay.
MacBook, which is super thin travel. It kind of feels like you're just like tapping on wood almost.
Mm-hmm.
And it has a really like unique sound when you're typing on it.
Yeah.
It's very specific. If you've been around.
If you've been to a coffee shop, you know this. Like,
Yes, exactly. Yeah,
That's
if you've
it.
been around a sea of MacBooks, you
Yeah.
know what the sound, clickety sound is. For me, it's not really a huge deal. I find that I can get used to it.
Yeah.
10 minutes, I'm back to where I was in terms of feeling comfortable and typing fast.
Do people really get upset about that?
A lot of people don't like. No, well, it's
I
not,
mean, and I want to know for anybody watching live, like, is this something that upsets you? I mean, no judgment. I'm just curious because I just didn't know.
It's the sound, but it's also the feel, the really short travel. Like it's a very
try it.
specific thing. Yeah, you should try it because
Oh, yeah, okay.
when you get your fingers on it, it's just a different feel for sure.
Yeah, it definitely is. Yeah. Okay. Now I see it.
Yeah.
Now I'm all wrapped up in the controversy.
And a lot of people, and what the problem with it is, a lot of people have moved away from MacBooks for this exact reason. And so. If there's people out there who are like, I want to try something new. I've heard Windows laptops are getting better. I
Yeah.
really hate the keyboards on the MacBook. I want to try something. It's just finding the same old thing here, same old problems. Not to mention that those MacBook keyboards have had all sorts of reliability issues. They've had to recall keyboards. They've had to replace them.
So that's kind of a
Apple
bold
has.
move.
Apple has, yeah.
That's
yeah,
another
it's
bold move for
It's a
Dell's
bold
part.
move, and I hope they don't regret it in a couple of years because I'm sure they'll continue to kind of iterate on the technology. It is slightly different. It uses actually magnets to simulate or emulate the feeling of actual more travel.
Okay.
So
Really?
little
So it just gives
magnets
you that extra
little magnets
tactile-
in there. Yeah.
Okay.
So-
That's an interesting way to go about it too.
Yeah, so they have some different technology going on in there, and I personally I like it. I feel like I can get used to it, but I think Apple's going to be moving away from these keyboards just because they've been so controversial. They've had so many issues, so I'm curious to see how this actually plays out. It's hard to know now, but
Yeah.
a year from now, 2 years from now, I think we'll kind of know if it worked out in the long.
Well, I want to know what people think. So let us know. How do you feel about the keyboards and where you stand on that issue?
Yeah, exactly.
What are we talking about with pricing and availability?
Pricing starts at $999, $1,000.
Okay.
That's for a pretty low-end configuration that I think a lot of people wouldn't want.
Yeah.
It starts at a low, only 4 gigabytes of RAM and a Core i3.
Oh,
which
yeah,
is
that's not enough.
Yeah, a 2-core processor. So I would recommend at least going up to a quad core with 8 gigabytes of RAM, which is going to, I think, push you up a few $100s from there. There's also a 4K option, quite a bit more expensive. This is more. It's when you work it out like apples to apples, it's like a couple $100 more expensive than the XPS 13.
Okay.
So it does fit into kind of a strange like why don't I just get the XPS 13? You know, that's totally viable. I think.
Yeah.
You know, when you compare these two, like. You save a little bit on price. The XPS 13 also has a little bit better battery life. But totally honestly, and I said this in my review, when you put the XPS 13 and this side by side, it could just be me like gravitating towards something that's new, but I really found myself going back to this as the one I'd prefer to use.
Which says a lot. You try out a lot of computers.
I do,
That is what you do.
and I talk very highly about the XPS 13, and so I think it's saying something. I would say try it out though. I think that it's weird that little thing, but the taller screen size, that means a lot to me, and the changes in how the thing is built means a lot. So,
when does the review go up?
the review is up this morning.
Okay.
And we've got a video review on YouTube as well if you want to check that out. It goes
Nice.
in detail. So.
Awesome. We'll take a look at that. And thank you, Luke, once again for bringing in a new computer for us to look at. Always good. And you can check out the review, like you said, and the video, digitaltrends.com or on our YouTube channel. Check out everything there. And coming up next, we have Matt Katz, who's going to be joining us. We're going to talk about everything going on with China, with Hong Kong, and all of these tech companies. We've all seen what happened with Blizzard. We've all seen what happened with Apple. We're going to kind of boil that down a little bit and really understand what's happening and get a better idea of it. That's for everybody, including myself. So that's coming up next. So stick around. Back here in a minute with more Digital Trends Live. Welcome back to Digital Trends Live. Again, thank you for joining us. We broadcast live here every single weekday, bringing you tech news, headlines, interviews, and discussions. I'm Greg Nibbler, joined now by Mr. Matt Katz. Hello, Matt.
Hello, Greg.
Matt is our news editor here at Digital Trends, and I've been wanting to really dig into this topic a lot, and you're the perfect person to do this, and it has to do with everything that's going on with Hong Kong and China and tech companies. We've all seen what's happened with Blizzard. There's all that controversy that's going on. There's Apple. Everybody's getting involved, and it seems like it's pretty messy, to be honest.
Yeah, it's complicated, it's
Yeah.
messy. It's something that we've been writing a lot about on Digital Trends. And really what's at issue here is, do these companies want to stick to the principles that they espouse? You know, Apple, Blizzard, all of these companies say that they want, you know, a better world, a freer world, and that sort of thing. But they also really want to be in the Chinese market.
Yeah.
And the thing about the Chinese market is it is not quite as free as the American market, and there are a lot of human rights abuses on the part of the government. The big thing that's going on right now, and has been going on for quite a while, are the ongoing protests in Hong Kong. Hong Kong has always been this little bastion of more freedoms than the rest of China, and China has been trying to impose more totalitarianism in Hong Kong. There have been ongoing protests, and anytime someone has been speaking out about these protests, we've seen some of these giant tech companies try to silence them or try to help the government of China because they make their phones there. There's a huge market of billions of, or at least 1 billion people in China, and they want access to that. But if they do that, they are kind of compromising their values.
Yeah, I mean, kind of, or a lot,
lot.
compromising.
A
them
lot
in some
compromising your
instances. Yeah, I mean, there we go. What's going on there? And there's a lot that people can read about, as far as what the disagreement is and what's going on with the citizens of Hong Kong and what they're having to deal with. But yeah, with these tech companies, maybe we should walk through just a couple of specific examples and just talking about what's gone on in case people have maybe seen the big headline but don't really understand as far as what's happened. And maybe Apple would probably be one of the best ones to go to first, talking about with that map that they had that was up there. There's an app with a Hong Kong map.
So there was an app that protesters were essentially using to avoid the police. Police have been cracking down, as we saw in some of those clips, quite violently on these protesters.
Yes.
And these are essentially pro-democracy protesters, and police were going after them with tear gas, with violence, and they really wanted to avoid it. So they were using this app to try to avoid the police. Apple essentially took this app away, saying that it was being used for both good and bad purposes. They claimed, even though there wasn't much evidence, that it was being used by criminals. But, I mean, what's really going on here, as far as we can tell, is that they were acquiescing to the Chinese government. Apple, as we know, builds a ton of their iPhones in China. It's a huge market for them. They don't want to be shut out. And so this was them essentially playing ball with the Chinese government.
Well, and when it comes to that app, too, there's so many other apps that can be utilized for that purpose, like Waze. I mean, you can figure out where there's traffic stops. So if they're talking about how that's something that's illegal, there's a bit of hypocrisy in there because Waze is used all the time to say, hey, there's a traffic trap coming up that you got to watch out for. There's a camera coming up, and so in that aspect, couldn't that be also applied there?
Yeah, I mean, what was going on here was this was the app that the protesters were using.
Yeah.
This was the one that was commonly used by the protesters, and it's no longer available. So that is something that is a huge blow to Apple, which wants to be this company that everybody likes, that can do no wrong, that is pro-freedom, pro-democracy. But here they're helping out essentially a crackdown on pro-democracy protesters.
Yeah, I mean, and it seems like most of the big tech companies too, connectivity and a world that's more connected is really one of their things, and this is certainly would seem to go against that. What has the backlash been, and what's Apple's response been?
I mean, Apple said that this was the right thing to do. There's been a lot of commotion within the company. Employees don't like that this has happened, and we've reported about that on Digital Trends. And he basically, Tim Cook came out and said, this is something that we did because, like I said, he said that criminals were using it. So they're kind of standing by what they did. It's something that, they're damned if they do or they're damned if they don't, because they want to. If Apple was kicked out of China, that would be gigantic ramifications for their business and for us. If you don't have these factories that are building iPhones, they're not going to be able to keep up with demand. They're not going to be able to build them for as cheaply as they are. Right. And it's going to affect the entire product line of everything that they make. So being kicked out of China would be just terrible for the company.
And that's something that I think everybody kind of has to factor in too, and a reckoning of that is, do you want your cheaper? I mean, iPhones aren't cheap by any means, but they're going to get a lot more expensive, or they won't be available if that were to happen. So it's certainly something to weigh in there. But talking about just the news side of it, we also have, that's Apple covering that, and like Matt said, we have extensive coverage at digitaltrends.com that you can go into and really dig into it if you want to. But also there's the issues with Blizzard and Hearthstone and everything that happened there. Can you give us kind of a rundown on the timeline of that?
All right, so a couple of weeks ago, there was this big Hearthstone tournament. Hearthstone is Blizzard's card game. It's a World of Warcraft themed card game. And one of the players that was playing it, he essentially put up a pro-Hong Kong protesters message. At the same time, the hosts, the announcers, hid under their desks while that was going on because I think they knew that Blizzard, which is a huge presence in China, would be upset. Blizzard took away this person's winnings and fired the two broadcasters who even let it happen. They've since given him his winnings back, and I think they reduced his ban from competitive Hearthstone play to about 6 months. But Blizzard has been facing huge backlash from this. Boycotts from gamers. What's really interesting is today Overwatch comes out on Nintendo Switch. And everyone was originally very, very excited about this move. We have an op-ed up right now on digitaltrends.com where you can read why this is no longer the happy day that we thought it was, because Blizzard has essentially abandoned its principles in order to go along with the Chinese government. So you've got people all over the internet that are canceling their Blizzard accounts, things that they pay for, things like World of Warcraft, they are abandoning because they see this company as not one that they can stand up with, someone that is moving against the Hong Kong protesters in a way that a lot of people disagree with.
There was some news, and I saw this morning too, and I'm just getting notification too, just about them calling off their Overwatch launch at the Nintendo event. Yeah.
So that's
huge.
They had a big event planned, I believe, for today in New York City for the launch of Overwatch on Switch.
I mean, that's enormous.
Yeah.
Overwatch is a huge game.
Yep, and they canceled it because I think that they realized that people are going to protest, people are going to be upset. They didn't want to have to answer questions about it. So they canceled it. They didn't specifically say this is why they're canceling it, but we can infer. I think we're all intelligent enough to know that this is a big PR event that they normally would have moved forward with.
Yeah.
But
I don't think you cancel Overwatch over just any other issue than this.
Exactly, yeah. BlizzCon is coming up. That's their big annual Blizzard convention, and it's going to be really interesting to see what happens there if we do see protests, if you see people, running towards the stage with pro-Hong Kong protester messages. It'll be really interesting to see what happens. Will they cancel events?
Yeah.
I don't think they're going to cancel the whole thing, but we might see some individual event cancellations or lockdowns, more security. Who knows?
So they canceled, this one today with BlizzCon coming up. Any other signs from the company as far as what they've actually said?
They put out a statement, so they put out kind of a meaningless statement, which reduced the punishment against that Hearthstone player. But in the end, I think people wanted them to say, we were wrong, and they're not saying that. They're still, because they don't want to upset the government of China.
Right.
For the same reasons that Apple doesn't. There's a huge market there, and they don't want to be left out of that market. They are a ton of people that play Hearthstone, StarCraft, all of these, World of Warcraft for sure, in China. So if you just lost access to that market, that would be huge for their balance sheet. All of a sudden, they're losing millions of dollars.
And I would think China does have that option where they could just cut it off.
Easily. Yeah. They've done it they did it with Google. They've got what's called the Great Firewall of China, which essentially determines what you're allowed to look at on the internet. For example, I believe Twitter and Facebook are both inaccessible in China. They've got their own versions within the Great Firewall of China. But you can't actually use it unless you have a VPN or some other way of getting outside of the firewall.
That's just crazy to even think about, just that aspect. That's a whole other discussion on that. I know South Park's not allowed there anymore either. It was a good episode.
Very, very true. I still have to watch that one.
It was good. Harsh. But that's just a little bit of what's going on. And there's so much that you can dig into with each of that. And that's why Matt and our news department and everybody there keeping up to date with everything that's happening with that. And thank you for coming on here and kind of boiling this down a little bit, giving us a little bit more context as far as what's going on, so you can follow along, like I said, with all of that at digitaltrends.com. And we have more coming up. We've got Billy Wayne Davis, who's going to be joining us. We have Read 'em and Weep. We're going to take a look at some of the comments that come through across our many different platforms. And we have some more news coming up, news about the way we travel and how tech is changing that. So all that's going to be here. Thanks for joining us. Stick around, back here in a minute with more Digital Trends Live. Perfect way to roll in from the break with that, with a zombie baby. Hello, everyone. This is Digital Trends Live. Thanks for joining us. I really appreciate it. Hit that subscribe button, share the show, tell a friend, all of those things. I'm Greg Nibbler, and let us talk about some news. So right now, we're going to talk about some trending tech stories that have to do with the way we travel. This is how it fell today. So let's talk about this. The first one I want to bring up has to do with something going on in Australia, and it is a solar car race. So that is what is happening. So this is going on right now. It's called the Bridgestone World Solar Challenge. Started this week in Darwin, Australia, and it's a 1,900-mile race to Adelaide across the country. So it's a collection of 44 different solar-powered vehicles, and they do this race every 2 years, and it brings together the fastest solar-powered cars in the world. So there's a lot of them that show up for this. A lot of them try for it. There's actually some trials that go on before they're even admitted into it, but they build it down to 44 different ones. And they've got different racers four from the United States. There's University of Michigan, Stanford, Minnesota, and Cal Berkeley. So a lot of these are university teams where they put together these cars and then try to race them. So the way it works is, they're going across this entire huge swath of the country, so 1,900 miles. The teams arrive days before the event, and then that's where they go through a bunch of technical inspections. So they race from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. each day. So that's kind of the time that they're limited to, which makes sense if it's a solar-powered race. Wow, that's an interesting one right there. And so they race for that amount of time, and then actually to satisfy the requirements of this race, they're required to be self-sufficient and spend the night in the desert, in the Australian desert, which doesn't sound enticing to me, but that's what they do. So they spend each night, and then they can start again at 8 a.m. while they fight off, I'm assuming, crocodiles and scorpions or something. So that's part of it. So it started in, earlier this week. It's expected to end in Adelaide by Thursday, October 20th. And they think that the winning speeds throughout the whole thing will be between 55 and 62 miles per hour based upon previous years and based upon the tests that they've done. But it's pretty cool as far as actually seeing the advancement of technology in this aspect. We talk a lot about electric vehicles, but there's a few manufacturers out there that are working on solar-powered vehicles. I believe it's Toyota who's going to be putting some on. Honda is also working on this, where they're going to be putting some onto their vehicles to try to, accent the power a little bit. But to be completely solar-powered is really difficult. To capture that much energy and be able to store that much energy based on solar panels on a car is really hard. So it's a pretty cool technical achievement that each one of these cars has done just to even be there. But we'll see who actually wins it. So it is going on now. They have a live stream you can follow along with, although from what I've ascertained, the live stream is just of the finish line. So it's a whole bunch of people partying at a finish line. And it's going to be days, apparently, before anybody gets there. So it's still entertaining. You're not going to see a lot of cars on it, but you can watch that. So again, that is to get it right, the Bridgestone World Solar Challenge, and that's the race going on right now in Australia. Read more about that at digitaltrends.com. All right, let's give you some other tech news here, talking about travel and the way tech is changing it. That's kind of what we're touching on today. This one is really fascinating and a great example of how far we've come in the last 400 years. I know that's a long time, but really it's not that long. And the comparison I'm making right here has to do with the Mayflower. And the Mayflower, well, that's a little over. Well, up 450 we'll go. So 420. So it's the Mayflower, which crossed the Atlantic, of course, going from Plymouth to Plymouth, and that was a little over 400 years ago. So this is another example of this, but now this new one, it's also called the Mayflower. It is an autonomous ship. So showcasing the difference of where we have come. It is a fully autonomous ship that's part of a collaboration that's going on between IBM and an organization called ProMare, which is a marine research and exploration group. So ProMare and IBM teamed up, and this is what they're coming up with. So this ship right there, we're seeing an example of it. It hasn't actually been built yet. It's being built. So these are the renderings of what it's going to look like. And it's going to actually start the journey on September 6th, 2020, and then cross from Plymouth, England to Plymouth, Massachusetts, following the same route. Let's talk about some of the technical sides of this thing. So that journey, just to give you a reference point, is 3,220 miles over the Atlantic Ocean in order to get there. So this thing is going to be, they're expecting to launch it in some favorable weather conditions. So they think that time of year should be pretty good weather-wise. I wouldn't be surprised if they move the date just a little bit. But some of the technology behind it, as far as how it's going to propel itself, is pretty state-of-the-art. So it's going to have a hybrid propulsion system utilizing wind, solar, and state-of-the-art batteries and a diesel generator for good measure. So it's going to have those different ways that it's going to be able to propel itself across the ocean, which you need a pretty diverse way in order to do that. On board, it's going to have 3 different research pods to cover different things, including maritime cybersecurity they're going to be testing out. They're going to test out some sea mammal research is going to be part of this, and also studying microplastics in the ocean. So they're really going to be covering a lot. They're also developing some virtual reality and AR capabilities to where ideally what they want to do, according to the study that they released, is they want it to be where you can actually go on board. There's not going to be any humans on board this thing. It's completely autonomous, but with a VR setup, you could actually board it in live time and see what it sees, which would be a pretty cool aspect of it. If they could actually do that, I think that'd be pretty amazing. So this is, if it's successful, will be among the first for full-size seafaring vessels navigating the Atlantic on their own. So this is one of the first times that you would have this. Now the Navy, the U.S. Navy has some autonomous vehicles of its own. We don't know what all those capabilities are, but this is certainly the first time for a public one where you're going to see a lot of this being utilized. And it's pretty cool. And it's utilizing this IBM technology. They're going to have radar, they're going to have LiDAR, they're going to have cameras. So it's going to have all the bells and whistles attached to it in order to do that. But that is something that's pretty cool, pretty good use of technology. You can read more about that at digitaltrends.com. All right, one more thing here, then we're going to take a break, and then we're going to be getting Billy Wayne Davis here on the show. He's going to be joining us. So let's talk about this. One more topic I want to bring you up to date on, and this is certainly a trending topic today. It has to do with NASA releasing their new spacesuits. So this is what's going on. The new suits that the astronauts are going to wear for the Artemis program. So the Artemis program is the program where we're going to be going back to the moon. And this is what NASA's been planning for a while. There it is. There's one of the astronauts right there wearing the suit, or modeling the suit. I'm assuming she's an astronaut. And that's what we're looking at. So these ones are called the Exploration Extravehicular Mobility Unit, or XEMU, I think is how they're saying that for short. It's XEMU. And it's designed to protect astronauts from temperatures ranging from minus 250 degrees to plus 250 degrees Fahrenheit. So a large range, which is what they're going to need when you're on the south pole of the moon, because it actually gets a lot of sun radiation right there, so it can get very hot, very cold. So you need that. A couple of things that they talked about with this and how it's improving is they're using pressure within there, but the astronauts can also balance the pressure. They can decrease it if they want to. And they compared it to essentially a basketball shaped like a human. So for a basketball, you have to have 8 pounds of pressure, and that's what they basically built. They said the technological side of it is very hard. And also another thing for the moon in particular is there's a lot of dust on there. This is something they found with the Apollo missions, where dust would get into everything. So they had to be really, really careful with what kind of cracks and crevices and covering everything up so that no dust can get into the suits to screw them up, essentially. So that's what we're looking at with that. Again, these are the new suits from NASA. They said they use 100% oxygen to protect the astronaut from decompression sickness. There's a lot of technical sides of this, of course, because it's an extremely technical thing to do, to create a spacesuit that can survive that kind of temperature out in space. Yeah. That's a pretty big deal. They also involved some different rotors around the waist so that they have more mobility. They showcase them picking up something and handing it off, which in the previous spacesuits you wouldn't be able to do. But pretty cool, and that is what NASA unveiled. So again, part of their Artemis program. We also are going to be having some news up about Virgin Galactic and their spacesuits that tourists, that's you, could use. Well, if you have enough money to fly up there. But that's something else that you can check out at Digital Trends. So take a look at all of this. We've got a lot of coverage of space and all the technology involved of it right there where you can take a look at it. So here's what's coming up next, though, for Digital Trends Live. We're going to take a break. We're going to come back. We have Billy Wayne Davis, who's going to be joining us right here on the show. So stick around. Back here in a minute with more Digital Trends Live. Welcome back to Digital Trends Live. Thank you for joining us. Hit that subscribe button, that way you get the notifications when we do go live. And the secret is it's 9 a.m. Pacific every day. But, you know, hit subscribe anyway. It's always a good thing to do, and share the show. I'm Greg Nibbler. Now, our next guest, you have seen him on Conan O'Brien. You've heard him on the WTF podcast with Mark Maron. But now he has truly made it because he's here on Digital Trends Live. It's Billy Wayne Davis. Hello, Billy Wayne.
Hi.
How you doing?
Wonderful. How are you?
I'm doing good. I noticed that you had your coffee cup. This is now a new segment here on the show. If you can show us what you're drinking out of, Getting Dug with High. There it is, right there. I think that sums up a lot.
I was on it yesterday.
Were you? Nice. Well, you've been on a lot of things, and we have a lot to talk about. So behind the scenes, Billy Wayne and I have known each other for a long time, but I know a lot of people may not know, or if they don't, you know, for some reason they've been in the dark. You've been a comedian for a long time, amazing comedian.
Well, amazing, I'd say the last 4 or 5 years. Like, for a while, I was just a comedian.
That's true. So officially you crossed over into amazing. Well, going back, mouth breather and comedian. So going back a little bit further, what was that moment? And this is something I always am curious about when it comes to stand-up comedy, because it seems like something that's terrifying to get up there and do with that instant feedback. But where was the moment, or when was the moment when you officially knew, like, okay, I can be a professional comedian?
I mean, I'm going to sound mean, but, like, you guys, if you've ever been to an open mic, which is, like, anybody can get up there and talk.
Yeah.
And then you see some people that are already making money at it, you're like, I think I could probably do this. And then you realize, like, a lot of doing it for a living is not needing a lot of money to live on. And I was in my early 20s and was like, I'm already doing this. This is great. So.
Perfect. Yeah. So that's it. So just nobody else was as good as you. So I understand. Staying humble.
There were way more people better than me, but I could live on nothing. That helped.
Well, talking about material and on the road, because you're out on tour right now. Actually, let's talk about your tour and where you're at with this.
Tomorrow I'm in Portland, but it's sold out, which is awesome. But we're doing a live podcast recording. I'm doing it with Robert Evans of Behind the Bastards, which is a great podcast. And then Friday I'm in Salem, and Saturday I'm in Eugene. There are tickets still available. I'm doing stand-up comedy. You guys will really like it. I know the area pretty well too, so I make fun of it pretty well.
Actually,
I'm in Seattle and stuff after that.
So with your tour and with your material, do you adapt it to where you're at, or do you stick with the same stuff each time?
There is I like to do a mixture because it can drive you crazy if you do the same set over and over again. It drives me crazy. Some guys can do it no problem, but at least the first 5 to 10 minutes, I'm going to make fun of your town and what you guys do for a living and all that, because it fascinates me. I like geography. I like geology. I like how towns start, why cultures are the way they are. So it's like really fun.
Well, and let's get a little bit of background on you too, and where you come from, and where maybe like the basis of your comedy originally came from.
I'm from East Tennessee, originally the Cumberland Plateau, and yeah, there you go. You guys got the map up. I'm between Knoxville and Chattanooga, right in there, and that's where I'm from. That's Nashville. That's where I started. But I don't know if you're aware of politics, but it's a pretty red place. And I grew up with 2 progressive thinking educators, and that gave for like a lot of like comedic fodder for me, where I was like, I already thought a little different than everybody else, but I like making people get along and laughing. So I figured out, like, it's better to make somebody laugh than make somebody punch you, even if you agree. So I get punched.
Well, I mean,
Mike figured it out.
it's still a balance. I mean, you do go to every town and make fun of them. So, I mean, it can
Yeah,
happen.
some people like it, and some people are like, "Why'd you do that?" I don't know, man. I'm sorry.
I got to ask, where are you at right now? Are those birds in the background that I just heard?
Yes, I'm on my front porch in Los Angeles. I got flip flops on. My wife makes fun of me because she was like, "You have a tan line just on your feet," and I was like, "Yeah, because we live in Los Angeles. It would be a waste not to." I
Exactly.
lived in Seattle for 6 years. I was tired of the gray. You guys know what I'm talking about in Portland.
I do.
So I'm in Los Angeles. It's sunny every day. I'm outside.
I'm jealous of your foot tan right now. Now that I know,
I'll
now
show
that I
you
know it
tomorrow.
exists, it's all I can think about. All right, let's talk about a couple other things. So, since you're on the road so much, and this is a show, where we focus on tech sometimes, I want to talk about that just a little bit. So, since you're out there, let's talk about social media. How has that changed comedy, like over the time that you've been doing it, and what social media app do you use the most?
You can reach people. You don't have to. Oh man, it says my internet connection is unstable. That's a metaphor for my life. Basically, it is. I think I can go directly to my fans. I can talk to them in a way that we could never do before. I was a little weary of it for a while, but now I realize, like, oh, you control what you put out. You don't have to go through these gatekeepers and stuff like we used to have to do. I mean, you still need to a certain degree, but it's just easier. I mean, but on the flip side, anyone can get a hold of you too, which is, I kind of like some of my colleagues in comedy do not like that people can reach out and tell us what they think, but I think it's pretty funny. Especially for us to be so opinionated about everything, and then when people give us their opinion, they're like outraged. You're like, well, it's pretty funny.
Well, all right, I kind of want to know more about that, but I'm afraid to go down the rabbit hole with that one.
I don't get like a lot of people yelling at me because I don't say, like, I'm not too extreme about either side. Like I said, like I like that balance.
Mm-hmm.
But then you get some interesting people say stuff, and my wife is good about making me not say stuff back. She's made me realize I don't have to reply to everything.
That's got to be hard, though, not to instantly reply.
Oh, it's gotten me. I've wasted probably a couple of days of my life replying to stuff I shouldn't reply to.
All right, I was debating on going down.
Prove this right.
Right. I was debating going down this rabbit hole, but okay, let's just do it. What's the worst one you've ever gotten? What's the troll that got under you the most?
It'll happen. It's usually just friends of mine that control me the best. Like they just say stuff they know that I can't stand, and I'll just, before I even know it, I've written a thread and not even, and then my wife will be like, "Don't send that." Like, I'm gonna fight him. I'm gonna fight him. He's just doing it to make you mad. I'm like, I know. That's usually just people saying stuff I know that they don't believe, and they know it drives me crazy.
Do you ever have people show up at your show just to do that? Like, how do you handle hecklers?
I don't care for hecklers, but I grew up with two younger sisters who were they were smarter than me. So I trained in how to be cold and hurt someone with as few words as possible.
Nice.
Survive.
Yeah.
So I can pull that training out sometimes if they push it too far.
Survival tactic.
It is.
That makes sense. All right, a couple more questions here I wanted to get to, and I want to know your spin on this. So this is something I brought up here on the show before with other people, and it has to do with space tourism, and more importantly, I want to get your take on this. So there's three big billionaires who are running different organizations right now that eventually want to take people to space. There's Elon Musk with SpaceX. There's Richard Branson with Virgin Galactic, and then there's Jeff Bezos with Blue Origin. So they all have programs where eventually you could go to space with, in theory, one of them. Which one would you go to space with, and why?
I think I would go with Elon just because he seems to have the greater good in mind more than the other two. And then, because Richard Branson, he had an airline, he sold it to Alaska. I don't trust him. I don't know why. He was also in the music business, and then he got into the cell phone and airline business. I don't trust that. Those aren't parallel businesses that need to. And then Bezos has already proved that he's just in it for himself. Like, if the minute something goes wrong, he's pulling that pod, and we're all doomed.
So you would go live with Elon in space?
Yeah, he seems the most fun too. Like, he has kind of a sense of humor about himself.
Yeah, he's a bit of a wild card.
Yeah, I think you kind of need that in space.
All right, fair enough. Want to know the answer to that? I know that we need to wrap up here pretty quick, but one other thing, just to ask you a tech question before we wrap up. We've been talking a lot about like biomedical enhancements, and I know where this could go, but within realm, what kind of robotic enhancement would you most want if you could get one?
I think the wings. I think just being able to fly would be the easiest. And I know what most people were thinking, like I was going to say, but I'm doing well down there, so it's fine. And
You've done
when it
amazing.
quits working, I can get way more stuff done, so I don't need to fix it.
All right, fair enough. You have done an amazing job.
Thanks.
All right, Billy Wayne, for everybody out there watching, I want people to know where to find you. I mean, obviously you're on your tour, but where are those tour dates stored at? What's the best place for people to go to watch Billy Wayne?
The quickest way to get my tour dates is bwdtour.com. It's got all my live dates. And if you're on the social media stuff, if you just Google Billy Wayne Davis, all that stuff, Instagram, Twitter, all that stuff comes up. So that's the easiest way.
Follow on that. Write him. He will read what you're saying. He may respond to it, but he will definitely read it. Billy Wayne Davis. Everybody, seriously, go check out all Billy Wayne stuff. You're gonna be in Portland tomorrow. I know it's sold out, but I'll still see you tomorrow.
Yes, can't wait.
All right,
Thank
Billy.
you.
Oh, thank you for being here. Thanks for being here on Digital Trends Live. Billy Wayne Davis, everyone. Thank you so much.
See you, Greg.
Bye. All right, that is funny. Billy Wayne Davis, right here on Digital Trends Live, and appreciate him very much joining us. He kept it within the realms, and that was a monumental achievement, and I do appreciate that. But seriously, Google him; he's hilarious. All right, let's do a little bit more though. We talked about some comments. Let's do a little bit of read 'em and weep. Why don't we? This is something that we didn't get to at the beginning of the show. Let's take a look at some of the comments that come through across our many different platforms right now. We have a lot of them that go up. You can always leave your comments, and we do read them. So I'm going to go through just a few here at the end of the show, and then I'll tell you a little bit about what's coming up tomorrow. But let's see if we can pull some of these up. Again, thank you, everybody, for watching Digital Trends Live. I do appreciate it each and every day. I'm going to look like this. It's going to look weird, but it's because I'm reading the comment. All right, Fabio, writing, Zoe Kravitz will play Catwoman opposite Robert Pattinson's Batman. I had to look up samples of her acting chops. I had a hard time finding anything that had more than 5 words. So Vampire Batman versus Mad Max Catwoman. I think I'll just have to keep rewatching Joker. Okay, you're wrong on that. She's pretty good, dude. I mean, come on. That's Lenny Kravitz's daughter, and let's see, who else is it? It's Lisa Bonet. I mean, seriously, that's a pretty good. Pretty good right there. So I think she's going to do fine. So Mad Max Catwoman, plus it's Catwoman. I mean, what are you wanting out of that? That's what I would have to question on that. I mean, it's Catwoman. It doesn't need to be a monumental role where you're going to win an Oscar. Nerdy Tex, writing, this automated gas pump fills your tank up like you would in a drive-thru. Or you can just buy a Tesla. Wow, I bet you are a lot of fun to hang out with. So Nerdy Tex, yes, that's true. The one thing, I mean, Tesla, if you have a Tesla, everybody likes to talk about having a Tesla. It's kind of like doing CrossFit. It's the same thing. If you do CrossFit, that's all somebody talks about. If somebody has a Tesla, that's all they talk about. So Nerdy Tex, I do agree though, a Tesla is cool, and yes, I'm jealous and I want one. So there you go. That's where we're at with that one. All right, Nerdy Tex on Twitter, thank you. Thank you for that comment. Pompey Casmilis, who's gonna conquer Rome soon. On Facebook, it's time for Silicon Valley to leave China. Why would the tech titans leave China? They would be perfectly happy to support a monstrous totalitarian regime in the US if it guaranteed them money and continued access to people's data. Ouch. Harsh. Probably right. So that article is actually up. That's an op-ed that our own Jeremy Kaplan wrote. pretty good. It's gotten a lot of feedback on it, both on all kinds of ways. But Pompey, thank you for that comment. So why would Tech Titans leave China? Well, they're not going to. That's what we just talked about. They have to be there. But that's something that we covered earlier today. So if you want to know more about that, I'd say go back and watch that article. All right, or watch that segment. So GQ Nelly. It's getting hot in here. So LG SM9000 4K HDR TV review. Okay, you want my review of your review? You pretty much said nothing positive about this TV. I think that is a bit irresponsible, as it does a lot well for a really good price. I appreciate the specs, but it seems like you've never used it as it is intended, watching actual TV, which it seems to do pretty darned well. Sounds like somebody bought themselves an LG SM9000 4K HDR TV and they're a little sensitive about it. But I will say that if that's Caleb, he is fair on those reviews. He does put his all into it. He does know what he's talking about, but you don't have to agree with him either. That's just his review. Certainly that you can have your own opinions on that, and that's part of what this show is. We like to get your opinions. We listen to them, we read them, we give our opinions back sometimes, but that's part of the fun. Floyd, regarding millennials, would rather raise their credit score than Instagram would rather raise their credit score than Instagram follower account. I think it's the other way around, just like everyone else. Shocking. Okay, yeah, that's true. I can definitely see that's the case. So Floyd, I agree on that. Follow me on Instagram at Greg Nibler. And then also follow Digital Trends on all of our different accounts. We're on so many of them. As you could just see right there, you can watch a lot of what we do. We're here live every single weekday, 9 a.m. Pacific, noon Eastern, bringing you all of these tech headlines, news, interviews, and discussions. And we appreciate you joining us. We do. Thank you a lot. Thanks to Billy Wayne Davis, who was here on the show, and everybody else who joined us throughout this episode. Coming up tomorrow on the show, we've got another edition of Work Life with Ciara Pressler, who's going to be here. That is always fun, and we'll keep you up to date on all that's going on in the world of tech. So follow along, and we'll be back tomorrow with more Digital Trends Live.